Studio Ghibli movies are massively overrated. And I know by saying that, I've basically taken a target, I've pasted it onto my forehead, and I've told everyone who's watching this video, shoot me. But I'm a man, I am a man, and I can take it. So fight me. Come at me, because I'm not changing my opinion. I have formed this educated and well-rounded opinion over a long period of time. I know what I'm saying, I'm not a dumbass. Well, okay, I am a dumbass, but I know what I'm saying, and my points are gonna hold some water, so freaking shut up and listen to me. Studio Ghibli shouldn't need any introduction, but in case you've been living under a rock for the last 35 years, basically, Studio Ghibli is one of the biggest, most well-renowned anime studios in Japan ever. Their movies have essentially taken the West by a storm, grossing hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're generally pretty well received and loved. And I think it's funny because their fandom is kind of weird. There's like a bunch of hardcore weebs, at least in my experience, the people that like Ghibli movies are hardcore weebs, and then a bunch of like basic white girls who think they're like super quirky because they like Ghibli movies. Like, you know the type I'm talking about, the ones that are like, oh my gosh, Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite anime of all time. It's like, shut the fuck up, Becky. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. The thing for me is, in all of that, I don't really like Studio Ghibli movies. I don't get a lot of enjoyment out of watching a Studio Ghibli movie. And I'd be lying if I said I just didn't enjoy a Studio Ghibli movie at all, because there's so much to love about Studio Ghibli. Like, I get why people like Studio Ghibli. Like, there's amazing aesthetics, an amazing soundtrack, like, they just have like sort of a charming feel to them, but I just don't really like them, and I think there's a lot of undeserved hype floating around the movies. And don't get me wrong, I have immense respect for Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki, the director of most of the successful Studio Ghibli projects. I just have a lot of problems with it. The first anime movie I ever watched was Spirited Away back 5 or 6 years ago, and it was when I was first starting to get into anime. And when I watched Spirited Away, I instantly could see why it was put at the top of every single anime movie ranking list as being, you know, the best anime movie of all time. It had amazing characters, it had amazing visuals, and just the overall feel of the show, or of the movie, was so charming, it was impossible for me not to like it, right? I liked Spirited Away. It was a good movie, and I think it totally deserved, you know, the #1 spot. The problem for me was when I went on to watch a bunch of other Ghibli movies, like I watched Princess Mononoke, My Neighbor Totoro, Castle in the Sky. They all felt exactly the same. The visual style is the same, the story beats are literally the same, the feel of the show is exactly the same, and it's not like, you know, a lot of movies where they sort of have a similar formula going, but they sort of change things up. Like, a great example of this is the Indiana Jones movies, right? The Indiana Jones movies have a style to it, but there's a lot of sort of variance going on in terms of, you know, like the characters and sort of like the villain's plots, and there's like a lot of sort of difference in terms of pacing, in terms of story, whatever else. In Studio Ghibli movies, everything is the same. Literally everything is the same. There is nothing that changes. And when I say like Ghibli movies, by the way, I'm meaning like the Hayao Miyazaki directed movies, not really like, I know they've done some other projects that are kind of off the beaten path, like Kaguya Princess, and then they did that 3D anime movie, I don't even remember what it's called. But for the most part, their most successful movies are just copy-paste. There's nothing that changes. And it's so incredibly boring, I can't get through any of the movies. Personally, I would put one of the Ghibli movies, like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke, as being the best anime movie of all time. But when you look at the entire work of the studio, I lose a bit of respect for it, because there's not a lot of originality going on in terms of the different movies. In addition to sort of this copy-paste story style that really triggers me in the Ghibli movies, they all have massive pacing issues. They'll basically take so much time dilly-dallying around at the very beginning of the story, and then the story will just abruptly end with no falling action, nothing. There's no conclusion. It's just like, okay, imagine this is like the normal story arc, right? Where you have sort of like the rising action, you have some like tension. It goes like this, and then, you know, you kind of have like a nice like fall, right? This is a Ghibli movie. There's like the rising action, there's tension, and then it just freaking like nosedives, like the stock market. It's really jarring. A great example of this pacing issue is Kiki's Delivery Service. And Kiki's Delivery Service is one of my favorite Ghibli movies because it doesn't fall victim to so many of the, I'd say, originality issues. It has a different story than some of the other Ghibli movies. The problem is, the first 20 minutes of the movie, Kiki's dicking around with her parents. She meets this like minor character that never pops up again. She talks with, I call her the bitch witch because she's this really nasty little girl who makes some mean comments to Kiki. Anyways, she like has a 2-minute conversation with Bitch Witch, and we never see Bitch Witch again. Then she like goes on this plane, she dicks around with some cows, and you snap your fingers, and 20-30 minutes of the movie have gone by in just the setup. Nothing of real note has happened other than just sort of the rise of the action. You get to the point where the story actually starts, and then the story starts, right? So a lot of the movie was wasted sort of in that beginning period. You get to the end of the movie, a very rushed conclusion where basically the main character, I guess a secondary character, he's this dude, I call him Bitch Boy, he like grabs onto this blimp and like gets fucking taken away into like the ether, and she has to like fly up and save him. She saves him, and then the movie just ends, no joke, like 2-3 minutes later after she saves him. No like falling action. She's like, I guess I'm a witch now. Like none of her like feeling issues or anything is ever like really solidly resolved. It just pisses me off because it's like the movie ends 5 minutes too soon, and it's every single Ghibli movie. It's not just 1 or 2 movies that have this pacing issue. Every single one has it, and it's almost like it's an intentional decision to dick with the audience. It pisses me off. This brings me to my biggest problem with Studio Ghibli movies, and it's that the themes are so incredibly simple, it doesn't make me think at all. You see, I'm a very smart person. I'm a philosopher, right? I like to think when I watch a movie, and I like to sort of, engage my mind in what the story is saying. And Studio Ghibli movies have such oversimplified themes, it's hard for me to do that. It's almost like it insults my intelligence at how overt they are with some of the themes. And I know a lot of the Studio Ghibli movies are targeted more at like a younger audience, so it makes sense they wouldn't, have the most complex themes of all time. But even their movies targeted at more of an adult audience, like Princess Mononoke, are just so simple, it's hard for me to watch. Like, for instance, Princess Mononoke, right? The whole theme of the movie is, like, humans need to protect nature. Like, deforestation is bad. Like, no shit it is. Like, I agree that we shouldn't be dicking with our planet. Like, I feel like Hayao Miyazaki, he made that movie and he's like, we did it, we solved climate change. The world is just gonna, be amazing. No, like, I already agree with this. I'm not a fucking idiot. I agree we shouldn't cut down our forests, and I think most people will actually, I know, some people may not agree with, that we shouldn't be deforested. I can't speak English. So maybe some people agree that we shouldn't be cutting down our forests. I don't know. It just feels like it kind of insults my intelligence when it just overtly shoves its message at me. And again, I think some of it's forgivable because it's targeted at kids, but at the same time, I think they could do a better job of making some subtle themes and asking some interesting questions, because they have a lot of philosophical connotations to them, the movies, but they're just kind of dumbed down. I don't know. So what am I trying to say here? Basically, my point of saying all this is I don't think every single Studio Ghibli movie is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. I think there's a lot to love about Studio Ghibli, but there's also a lot of just shit. Like I mentioned, there's the weak themes, there's sort of the unoriginal stories, and there's just massive pacing issues that make it hard for me to even watch a Studio Ghibli movie. And I think there's this idea that every single Studio Ghibli movie is a masterpiece just because it's a Studio Ghibli movie, and that's just fundamentally not true. There are so many other amazing anime movies that like aren't made by Studio Ghibli. Like there's Akira, there's like Ghost in the Shell, Your Name, I'm trying to think of some other ones, but there's just an immense number of anime movies that I watch and I really, really enjoy that just aren't Ghibli. And I kind of hate Ghibli because everything is just so like Ghibli dominated in like the anime movie world, and you talk to people who are just obsessed, like, oh, I love Studio Ghibli, like blah, blah, blah. Like, I get that they have like a respectable style, and there's a lot I respect them for, but I just don't like them, and so it's hard for me to give them that level of respect. I definitely think like Spirited Away is, it belongs on the top 10 list of anime movies of all time because it has amazing settings, or amazing aesthetics, and just the feel of a Ghibli movie is kind of special. But beyond that, I just don't have a lot of respect for it because so many of them are just copy-paste, so many of them have these pacing issues. I don't know. I'm definitely going to get torn to shreds for making this video. I'm kind of fearful of putting this video out at this point because I said a lot of stuff that's going to be controversial. I know I'm going to get torn apart in the comments. If you like this video by some chance, please like and subscribe. It feels terrible asking for that after saying all this. Yeah, and I just know I'm going to get torn to shreds, but that's fine. Yeah, and whatever. Maybe I'm a dumbass, and maybe I shouldn't be ranting on the internet about these things. Oh well. Anyways, I love you gamers, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.